Kenya's Eliud Kipchoge makes history by running the marathon 20 seconds below the 2-hour mark. Presidential election runoff set for tomorrow in Tunisia after court rejects Nabil Karoui's request for postponement. And negotiators say substantial progress has been made after 2 days of trade talks between China and the United States. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme, some of the winners at this year's pitch and polish competition in South Africa. And in sport, South Africa and Mali set to square off in the Nelson Mandela Challenge. We begin in southern India, where visiting Chinese President Xi Jinping and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi have held one-to-one talks. They met in an informal setting in the coastal state of Tamil Nadu on Saturday. The two leaders rode in an electric rickshaw to a beach hut in Kovalam, where the talks were held. Both sides hope that the discussions can help the two leaders further build their personal rapport. Earlier, they agreed to work more closely together. Among their common goals are developing their economies, fighting terrorism, and boosting cultural exchange.
At the two leaders' informal meeting in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu, President Xi noted the region has been closely connected with China since ancient times, as Tamil Nadu was a maritime transit hub for cargo on the ancient Silk Road. And Prime Minister Modi told Xi that the region's group of monuments at Mamallapuram have borne witness to the two countries' exchanges for more than a dozen centuries. He said cooperation today bears great significance and will promote global prosperity. In addition to cultural connections, another key theme of their meeting, counterterrorism.
Both leaders said that these were large countries and that radicalization was a matter of concern to both, and that both would work together to see that radicalization and terrorism did not affect the fabric of our multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious societies.
She told Modi the two countries' ancestors have overcome obstacles to carry out exchanges in literature, art, philosophy, and religion, which have greatly benefited both sides. And the two should keep up and deepen the good work.
Maybe, we would be able to understand each other better. We would be able to appreciate our civilizations better, development better, and then once this is understood, maybe it would be easier for us to come together for common development, for common security, for mutual prosperity.
Jin Chao, CGTN.
Some record-breaking news now. Kenyan Eliud Kipchoge has broken the 2-hour marathon barrier in Vienna. Kipchoge, who has been preparing for the Ineos 1.59 challenge for months, finished in 1 hour, 59 minutes and 40 seconds, supported by alternating pace setters over the course. The current marathon world record holder had failed to break the 2-hour barrier in May 2017, with the Nike Breaking 2 project managing to finish in just 2 hours 26 seconds. The time, however, will not be recognized as the official marathon world record because it was not in open competition and he used a team of rotating pacemakers. Kipchoge has expressed his joy, saying that no human is limited.
I am feeling good. It has taken 65 years for a human being to make history in sport. After Roger Bannister made history in 1954, it took another 63 years. I tried and I did not get. Now it's 65 years. I have tried. I'm the happiest man to run under 2 hours in order to inspire many people, to tell people that no human is limited. You can do it. I'm expecting more of the athletes in peace all over the world to run under 2 hours after today.
Meanwhile, as Kipchoge was making history, people from all over showed their support by holding viewing parties. Here are some of the reactions gathered from different countries in Africa.
They put so much, they've been training for so long for this and so much energy has gone into it, and you have the whole world watching, and so yeah, very exciting and very nerve-wracking to see him do it. It's awesome.
I had a sense that he was capable of doing it, coming from Monza and so forth. So I felt like this time he was ready sufficiently, yeah.
From now onwards, anything is possible. Anything is possible. He could probably do it in less time if he's challenged.
Well, let's now head to Tunisia, where the administrative court has rejected a request for postponement of the second round of the presidential election that was filed by Nabil Karoui's lawyers. The presidential election runoff will be held on Sunday. Here's CGTN's Adnan Shawashi with the latest.
Kais Saied was absent on the last day of the presidential campaign, but thousands of his backers gathered in downtown Tunis. Students, civil society and human rights activists, as well as ordinary citizens, artists and volunteers who support Saied were instrumental to the success of the event.
The election of Kais will write a new page in the history of Tunisia. He's a righteous man who will respect the constitution.
Nabil Karoui ended his presidential campaign in the same street. The media and business tycoon opted for a music concert. Traditional bands, Sufi music, and rappers sang the latest hits. Karoui joined the crowd and made many promises.
I love Nabil Karoui because he helps the poor. As president, he can save Tunisia.
Friday was a long day for Karoui and Saied. They faced each other live on television. Millions of Tunisians watched the televised debate. It was decisive for the two candidates and the 7 million registered voters who will elect the fourth president since the 2011 popular uprising.
As president, I will gather all political parties and national organizations and make an initiative against poverty. I promise to eradicate poverty.
I will not make any empty promises. I'll be a president for all Tunisians without distinction. I will respect the law, the constitution, and safeguard the state.
The two presidential candidates have two different profiles, programs and visions for post-2011 Tunisia. The retired constitutional law teacher and the businessman have both called on Tunisians to vote massively on Sunday.
Nabil Karoui has promised to modernize and digitize the public institutions and to help the poor and needy and inner regions, while Kais Saied has vowed to give back the power to the people by creating regional councils and putting into practice the process of initiatives and referendums. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
More than $14 billion have been raised at the Global Fund conference in France, with Uganda pledging $1.5 million. The money will be used in the fight against malaria, tuberculosis and AIDS, but there are concerns that as improvements are made, funding could decline. Here's Leonis Nyange with more.
Another hospital visit. Francis Tomsange nurses his 1.5-year-old daughter who is suffering from malaria.
She has been ill for a while, but we have been receiving treatment here.
Tomsange's daughter is one of many Ugandan children that have benefited from treatment provided by the Global Fund. The country is running several malaria prevention initiatives like use of mosquito nets, early malaria testing and treatment. Uganda's health ministry says the Global Fund has supported 60% of the malaria prevention initiatives. The government has also spent almost $1.5 million on health measures to treat and prevent the spread of AIDS and tuberculosis, and has seen a reduction in the number of cases. Uganda's malaria control program says prevalence in children under 5 years has decreased from 42% in 2009 to about 10%.
We have effectively invested the Global Fund resources for good results. For HIV, for example, we are nearing epidemic control. We have achieved the 90-90-90, and the government is now moving towards 95-95-95. TB is working seriously to identify cases and contain the epidemic.
In France, French President Emmanuel Macron has led the campaign along with other world leaders to secure funding. About $14 billion has been pledged in the fight against malaria, AIDS and tuberculosis over the next 3 years. But some in Uganda are concerned that improvements the country has seen in prevention could lead to a funding cut, and that funding, health workers say, is essential to ensuring the number of cases continues to fall.
What we are looking forward to is people actually putting this money and it being allocated to countries, very effective programs developed, because Global Fund is as a funding mechanism, and the effectiveness depends on well-designed programs which drive impact and which build sustainable systems.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation announced an additional $1 billion to be invested in malaria to reduce the burden of the disease. And with more money, Tom Sange and many others will continue to access better services. Leon Sanyanga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Negotiators say substantial progress has been made after 2 days of trade talks between China and the United States. They discussed agriculture, intellectual property, expanding trade and technology transfer. Chinese President Xi Jinping said a healthy and steady relationship is good for both countries and the world. And US President Donald Trump gave, and I quote, tremendous credit to China for the progress in talks. The two sides also agreed to work towards a final agreement. Our correspondent Nathan King has more from Washington.
The Chinese side hailing substantial progress. US President Trump says a substantial deal, at least on phase one of a multi-led deal, has been inked. The word substantial, though, is very important. That is not a word that has been used in this standoff, which has lasted over 15 months of a trade war. What we do know is that the tariff hike set to take place on October 15th is now on hold, while both sides try and ink a deal due perhaps in the next 3 to 5 weeks, say both negotiators. Let's listen to President Trump and Vice Premier Liu He.
Come to a deal on intellectual property, financial services, a tremendous deal for the farmers, a purchase of from $40 to $50 billion worth of agricultural products. To show you how big that is, that would be 2.5, 3 times what China had purchased at its highest point thus far.
What we don't know is exactly what will be in the deal. We don't have any text. Negotiators are going to work over the next few weeks. US President Trump talked of a potential signing at the APEC summit in Chile. We'll have to wait and see. But the atmosphere here has changed dramatically. Constructive talks on both sides, and the US president thanked President Xi, was effusive in his praise for the Chinese people, even mentioned Chinese students were welcome here in the US. But there are still obviously a lot of other issues apart from the trade standoff to work out. The status of Huawei on the so-called entities list, essentially a blacklist for dealing with American companies. As we know, 28 other entities have been added to that as well. And there are other frictions, although the US president downplayed any standoff over Hong Kong between the US and Beijing. The word substantive has been ringing out across the White House and with trade representatives. It's now a really interesting time to see if the positive attitude that we have seen here over the last couple of days can translate into some sort of deal.
Well, we are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Extinction Rebellion and other activists take climate change fight to South Africa.
Oh, what a life of hiding in a hive, afraid to be killed like a goat.
And Nigerian-born British poet goes back home to inspire young girls to speak out about society's challenges.
The newly upgraded CGTN website offers optimized coverage of China and international affairs, as well as distinct voices from around the globe. Be the first to know the biggest political news and discover the background to the major decisions. Decode China with a different perspective and get a better understanding of how China sees the world. Go beyond the news with sharp opinions on the events shaping today's world and reveal a China you have never seen before. Listen to entrepreneurs for in-depth analysis of the economy and touch the pulse of new technology via our hands-on videos. Travel back in time with CGTN to learn about China's past and immerse yourself in Chinese culture. To discover the stories behind Kung Fu. Get the latest news on Chinese lifestyle, including travel, sports, and nature. Regular productions including Ask China put high-ranking officials on the spot, while C-Lab presents new ways of storytelling via cutting-edge technologies, and Global Stringer delivers unique videos from China and beyond. Take a look at the world from a different angle. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The Turkish offensive continues in northern Syria, with more troops and military vehicles seen moving towards the border. Turkish forces have been facing fierce resistance from Syrian Kurdish fighters. Ankara is calling the offensive a counter-terrorism operation for its own national security. The incursion has drawn widespread criticism from the international community, but so far Ankara's assault shows no sign of abating. Michal Bar-David reports now from the Turkey-Syria border.
Turkey's so-called Peace Spring operation into Syria entered its third day on Friday. As Turkey pushed forward with the air and ground offensive, losses were suffered on both sides of the Turkish-Syrian border. Back-to-back explosions were heard in Syria's border towns as people rushed to hospitals in panic. The UN announced over 70,000 people have been displaced in the Syrian towns of Ras Al-Ain and Tel Abyad, where Turkey has been carrying out intense attacks. It was an emotional day on the Turkish side as well, as a funeral was held for a baby that was killed in Akçakale, Turkey on Thursday by a shelling attack from Syria. Ankara says it aims to clear the border areas of the Syrian Kurdish group, the YPG, it deems as a terrorist organization, and clear the way for the safe return of Syrian refugees.
It is our most natural and legal expectation that our allies show solidarity with us, per the principle of the indivisibility of the Euro-Atlantic security. It is not enough to say we understand Turkey's legitimate concerns. We want to see the solidarity very clearly.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg was in Turkey for talks with Turkish officials, including the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu. Stoltenberg emphasized that while NATO understands Turkey's legitimate security concerns, it also expects Ankara to act with restraint and caution.
We have a common enemy, Daesh. A few years ago, they controlled significant territory in Iraq and in Syria. Working together in the global coalition, we have liberated all this territory and millions of people. These gains must not be jeopardized. An imminent concern is that captured Daesh terrorists must not be allowed to escape. In the longer term, the international community must find a coordinated and sustainable solution to deal with the foreign fighters held in Syria.
Meanwhile, Turkey may be facing sanctions due to the operation. Earlier, several EU countries had called on Turkey to halt the operation, and on Friday, France's Secretary of State for European Affairs stated that the European Council would be discussing imposing potential sanctions on Turkey next week. Turkey launched the operation after U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed he would withdraw U.S. troops from that area, but Trump has since stated that the U.S. does not endorse the operation. Michal Bar-David, CGTN, Şanlıurfa, Turkey.
Meanwhile, EU governments have threatened sanctions against Turkey over its offensive in Syria. EU Council President Donald Tusk has condemned a warning by Turkey's President Erdogan that Ankara would send millions of refugees to the EU if it refused to back him. Tusk said EU nations would never accept refugees being weaponized and used to blackmail them. Meanwhile, France's European Affairs Minister has said Paris wants next week's EU summit to specifically discuss sanctions over Turkey's offensive. Climate strikes are intensifying around the world, and activists in South Africa are stalwart too. The environmental group Extinction Rebellion has been protesting in Pretoria outside the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. The movement is demanding drastic cuts to coal usage and heavier penalties on high carbon industries. CGTN's Julie Shear reports.
Extinction Rebellion and other organizations took their fight to South Africa's Mineral Resources and Energy Department. Activists made another impassioned plea for government to act on the effects of climate change.
I'm terrified of what the future is holding for my generation and the generations that are younger than me. There are 14-year-olds out there that are having panic attacks. I'm having nightmares. We are waking up and we are terrified that we are going to die young from climate change, and it isn't a far-off fantasy anymore.
They want South Africa to cut its reliance on coal. It's the cheapest means of producing electricity, but it's toxic to the environment and human life.
We are sick, we are very sick. Many women are getting the children who is not normal. We are affected by the TB, cancer, many sickness who came from those chemicals.
Everything that works in our businesses, from deliveries to the production of resources, is based on the burning of fossil fuels. And the science is loudly telling us, and has been telling us for 30 years, we have to stop burning fossil fuels. We can't be opening more coal mines, for example.
Activists are calling for higher taxes and effective policies to cut emissions and switch to greener energies.
We're giving our government notice that unless within 3 months they put in binding legal targets that are ambitious, and we're asking for net zero carbon emissions by 2025, that we will embark on a program of civil disobedience.
South Africans here today say this is just the start. They will keep the pressure on their leaders to effect change for the better of the country and the planet. Julie Shara, CGTN, Pretoria, South Africa.
Staying in South Africa, a new platform that allows the South African government to engage with citizens has been launched. GovChat is an online portal that is free to all South Africans. Here's CGTN's Travers Andrews with more.
Paving the way for a renewed approach to government accountability to the South African public. GovChat is not just that, it's much more, and transparency is at its core. The new platform now connects citizens to around 10,000 public representatives and 30,000 government facilities, with its main aim of connecting them to the government in a way that leads to action on the ground.
When you report a pothole or a water pipe that has burst, it connects you directly to the person in charge of that issue at the municipality. And then technical managers can then assign those issues to technical people, but at the same time citizens get responses directly through this automated process on what is happening. Citizens can track where this issue is, being able to hold government accountable in real time.
The platform will be especially useful for those complaints at electricity providers or even public officials that are failing to tend to their constituencies' needs. GovChat has the support of not just the government officials, but from the president himself, as part of the administration's mission to tend to the important needs of ordinary South Africans in a granular way.
It's free information. People are able to interact with government freely without any charge, but using technology. So we have to strengthen and make sure that there's more outreach on GovChat. So it even means connectivity, broadband deployment, infrastructure deployment, so that everybody, even in deep rural areas, are able to communicate through govchat.
And communicate using the new engagement platform can be done in simple ways, by adding GovChat as a contact in WhatsApp, Instagram or even Facebook Messenger. And important civic issues can be dealt with one click at a time. Apart from fostering greater engagement between the government and the citizenry, the new platform is also meant to be preemptive in many ways, by assisting government in reducing the high number of service delivery protests that continue to plague many communities. CGTN, Cape Town.
Nigeria may be one of Africa's fastest growing nations, but its social development often struggles to keep pace. At a poetry workshop in the capital Abuja, young women from conflict-affected areas had the opportunity to express themselves in a different way. CGTN's Daniela Pearson reports.
Conflict, how all these things affect our lives.
The British poet Teresa Lola has been hosting a poetry workshop back in the country where she was born.
How different we're all thinking, and how
here in Nigeria, girls still face gender discrimination and violence. But the award-winning poet is offering her art form as a tool of expression to empower young women.
Of hiding in a hive.
Someone who was brought up in Nigeria, I thought it was really important to shed a light on what is going on and the issues that are affecting young women, particularly conflict, gender inequality, poverty.
Why they are sitting like this?
A dozen teenage girls were chosen to participate in the poetry workshop.
You're inhuman, walking upright.
They're all from Nigeria's conflict-affected regions in the north and northeast. Those who wish to shared their poems.
So stand up and make a change.
The workshops definitely exceeded my expectations. Their poems were incredible, and they had a little showcase at the end, and you can just see the progress that they've made with their poems, but also with, amplifying their voices to the rest of the young girls.
They discussed societal limitations that girls in Nigeria experience. Early marriage and protection issues came up as the key barriers to education, and that these problems were exacerbated by a lack of women in positions of power.
I want a country, a nation where girls' voice will be heard, where girls will be able to reach their full potential, achieve their dreams and goals in life, be a voice to other voiceless children, both boys and girls.
Female leaders are really needed because we female, we are going to be protected, we are going to be given the right to voice out what is wrong with us, and we are going to feel safe and free in the society.
Nigeria's northern states had the highest rates of child marriage in the world. More than half of all girls are not in school. But here, the girls had a chance to voice these issues through metaphor, simile, and personification. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Well, we've got all the business news coming up for you after the break, including some of the winners at this year's pitch and polish competition in South Africa. And a look at Copenhagen, seen as the world's greenest city.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Across the African continent, a number of ambitious women are defying the odds. At the 2019 Engen Pitch and Polish competition in South Africa, 3 dynamic female entrepreneurs showcased their ideas at the pitching competition and won big. CGTN's Julie Shear now explains.
Pitch and Polish has helped entrepreneurs over the last 10 years brush up their ideas and boldly deliver them to investors. The final round of this year's 8-week pitching competition came down to 3 dynamic women-owned businesses.
When you enter a pitching competition, not only do you have an audience who've all got opinions, but then you've got these 3 scary judges who've got their opinions as well. So we were looking at not just the idea, but do we believe this entrepreneur could actually make this idea come true?
It was social entrepreneur Michelle Magabuti's passion project that impressed the judges. The business makes and sells menstrual cups, addressing a serious societal problem.
As a teenager, I went through the most uncomfortable ways to actually get my menses to be managed, because I could not have access to the pads. I once told myself that one day I will change the whole narrative. One day I'm going to go out there and try and find a solution that every girl should be able to actually have access to these sanitary products.
Mokabuti plans to increase manufacturing and expand distribution with the $5,000 prize.
We have already started engaging with the Eastern and Southern African countries. At the moment, we are in 23 countries already in Africa through the United Nations Population Fund. So basically, I want this to be in every household, where there is a girl, where there is a woman.
Women entrepreneurs are the fastest growing segment in the small business market, but are often hit by significant roadblocks compared to men. This program helps these ladies nail it and connect with potential investors.
Julie Shar, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
To South Sudan now, where authorities say that they are working to meet the country's financial obligations to the East African community. As of last month, South Sudan owed the bloc over $27 million, prompting activists and regional lawmakers to call for its suspension. With more on this, here's CGTN's Patrick Oyet.
South Sudan's government owes the East African community $27 million, and that puts the country's fate up for discussion in the regional bloc's meeting scheduled for November this year.
We urge for patience and understanding, because we have not failed out of that, as a result of bad will, but as a result of some of the problems that cropped up in our country, such as war and so on, that has depleted some of our resources.
The civil war that broke out in 2013 disrupted oil production. South Sudan relies on oil money to fund 98% of its budget. The country became a full member of the East African Community in August 2016. As part of the East African Community, South Sudan benefits from regional infrastructure projects like Mombasa and Dar es Salaam ports. The East African Community Treaty, Article 143 and 146, allows the suspension of a member state that fails to financially contribute to the bloc.
A suspended partner state shall cease to enjoy benefits provided for under the treaty, but shall continue to be bound by membership obligations until the suspension is lifted.
South Sudanese people in the capital, Juba, have been reacting to the news of a possible suspension from the East African community.
We have so many issues that we need to handle in our houses. When I talk about the houses, I mean South Sudan as a country. We really have so many things that we need to tackle. And paying this $27 million US dollars to joining the East African community is too much money. This money can be used in doing some developmental things that need to be done in this country.
It's going to be bad on us, because if our government didn't pay this money, it will affect us also. Because if the business people, maybe they went to East Africa, they buy something there, they bring good thing into South Sudan, it will be difficult for us.
South Sudan's members of parliament in the East African Legislative Assembly say Rwanda faced a similar challenge after joining the East African community. Kigali managed to mitigate the effects by negotiating various flexible arrangements, including longer transition periods for implementation, so South Sudan may be able to follow Rwanda's example as it tries to avoid suspension from the bloc. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli says that the economic figures achieved by Egypt during the first and second quarters this year reveal the progress made on the ground. The country recorded an economic growth rate of 5.6% and a drop in the unemployment rate from 13% to 7.5%. CGTN's Yasser Hakim looks at how Egypt has managed to boost its growth rates in the last few years.
In 2014, the newly elected president took over a shattered economy because of the political unrest. Economic growth was only 1.5%. Rigorous austerity measures were put in place.
For the last 3 years, the economic reforms included financial regulations, supporting SMEs, and funding national projects such as cultivating 1.5 million fedans and constructing the new capital. This has reduced unemployment levels.
Cuts on subsidies and expenditure has helped restore demand on the local currency after its devaluation in 2016. Officials also worked on raising sources of income. Natural gas discoveries significantly boosted dollar revenues. Tourist inflows increased from 2 million tourists in 2015-2016 fiscal year to 15 million in 2019. Along with a host of mega projects in infrastructure, roads, ports and 13 new cities, they have pushed economic growth up to 5.6%. But the target is higher.
Focusing on encouraging more small businesses, startups and investments are the government's priority to create more growth and job opportunities. Industrialization is the main path for now. We should concentrate on providing facilities for industries to set up and at the same time provide vocational training for workers in order to have the skilled labor to operate the new investments we are seeking.
With its aggressive reforms, the government is targeting economic growth to increase from the current 5.6% to 6% by the end of this fiscal year and to reach 7% growth by 2021. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Mayors of the world's leading cities are gathering in Copenhagen to call for a radical overhaul to combat climate change. CGTN's Guy Henderson is at the event in the Danish capital.
This may look like most of Copenhagen's rubbish. It is in fact an energy source feeding the Danish capital. Burnt at 1,000 degrees in what the company that runs it says is the most efficient waste-to-energy plant in the world, providing electricity and heat to tens of thousands of homes without using any fossil fuels.
Instead of depending on importing, for instance, gas, oil, coal, which are fossil fuels that emits a lot of CO2, then we're using the waste that otherwise should have been recycled, yes, some of it, but some of it put on landfill. That's really bad for the climate as well, or rather that's even worse for the climate.
There are plans for more improvements. Here, insulation's being installed. In future, they want carbon capture technology. Oh, and there's one other thing that's different about this place. It's got a ski slope on top of it. A message to citizens that powering cities need no longer be a dirty business.
Copenhagen wants to become the world's first carbon-neutral capital by 2025. And this plant is a very important part of that because 74% of all CO2 reductions envisaged in its plan are going to come from changing the way the city produces its energy.
It goes beyond that, though, by calling for changes to many aspects of urban life, from making travel cleaner to retrofitting inefficient homes. All of it while fostering, not hampering, economic growth, claims the man in charge of the whole thing.
We have a really good basement for how to develop, and also the connection between the project managers in the city and the private sector. And we are built upon that sense. So we have a lot of cooperation, a lot of projects, also with innovation and also implementation.
So you can see a lot of single-use plastics.
Raising awareness at ground level is a work in progress, say those involved. The city-sponsored charity does it by offering free kayak rides to anyone willing to help make Copenhagen greener. The plan's not without its critics, though. One of Denmark's oldest environmental groups says the benefits are exaggerated.
Only 56% of the emissions actually coming
is included in the calculations. And all the time we hear that in Denmark and in Copenhagen, one thing that we have succeeded is in transforming the energy system. But exactly the energy system has not really reduced emissions very much.
If cities are to be transformed to combat climate change, Copenhagen wishes to set the pace. Guy Henderson, CGTN, Denmark.
We're going to a short break now. Don't go away, lots more to come, including young girls from Ghana's underprivileged communities hone their talents through painting.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Scientists in South Africa have come up with a quirky solution to protect the country's endangered penguins. They've come up with a seductive decoy to try and lure penguins to reproduce in a safer environment. CGTN's Daniela Pearson reports.
It's not a real penguin, but scientists in South Africa are hoping the local penguins won't be able to tell the difference. And combined with bird soundtracks and fancy accommodation, the aim is to entice the penguins to a safer location and hopefully form a new colony.
We did test the decoys with real penguins, so we went to an existing colony and put the decoys out just so we could see how penguins would react. We wouldn't want them to totally ignore the decoys or be aggressive towards them. So we took them to a place called Stony Point, which is an existing colony, and we put them out there for a little bit, and the penguins were actually really intrigued and interested in them. So that was a really good result.
Penguin is the continent's only indigenous penguin species, but a combination of climate change and heavy fishing pressure means that the species has gone from vulnerable to endangered.
The African penguin population has decreased by about 99% since the 1900s, and that's mostly been because of human activities. In the past it was because of egg collecting and guano scraping, but more recently it is due to a lack of food. We all need to make an effort to try and combat the effects of climate change and to reduce carbon emissions, because that's the ultimate threat to the penguins and ultimately to all biodiversity.
Meanwhile, the decoy penguins, affectionately named Penguineth Paltrow and Mr. Waddlesworth, will continue to woo South Africa's penguins. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
We now move to the art scene in Ghana, where young girls from deprived communities are trying their hand at painting, hoping to be the next big artist. The girls believe that they have potential in a profession that has been largely dominated by men. From Accra, CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports.
Nadia Abubakar lives in one of Accra's deprived areas, Nima. She dreams of becoming one of Ghana's finest female artists. To achieve this goal, she spends her free time developing her painting skills at an art workshop across the street from her home. She's studying fashion design at university and says her talent in painting helps a lot.
When it comes to painting aspect with the colors, it inspires me. I sometimes put them into designs, make garments for my works.
Hussein Imuse trains Nadia and other girls at this workshop. He says he sees huge potentials.
Once she started it,
The first time she came here and I saw the first day she painted, I said, no, wow, Nadia, you can go far. So the only thing, you have to concentrate. So as now she's concentrating on the work. Automatically, it means by and by, she's going to be big.
Painting is seen as a male profession in the communities these girls come from, and girls who have passion for arts usually don't get support from their parents and society. That's the situation Husseini is trying to change by helping nurture their talents. Nadia Abubakar says female artists are quite rare in the community she lives in, and that makes it difficult to find someone to look up to for mentorship. Now, she's hoping to serve as a role model to other young girls.
I want to make it my job, bring out more artworks for other girls to see, get inspired by it, and also get involved into artworks.
Nadia Abubakar says she's looking for an opportunity to display her paintings in a gallery, which she believes will motivate other girls in her community to also dream big. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Tanzanian artist Lutengano Mwakisopili has new hopes for success after winning first place in the painting category of this year's Oscar of African Creativity contest. Organised by the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, the contest seeks to discover and develop African artistic talent. Lutengano competed against 60 other artists from 20 African countries for top honours in his category. CGTN's Isaac Lukando caught up with him in Dar es Salaam.
Lutengano may be the most creative painter on the African continent. Winning this year's Oscar of African Creativity Award in the painting category might be proof of this. A painting depicting challenges of freedom of speech in Africa won him the award, and he believes his success is a result of his passion for painting.
I feel very happy when I paint. I'm happy even if I don't get to sell my pictures. I only sell because I need to make a living.
The Tanzanian artist, who started painting in 1992, incorporates mixed media in his art, and he attributes part of his success to years spent at Nafasi Art Space, a platform for artistic exchange in Dar es Salaam. Platforms like Nafasi Art Space play a crucial role in getting artists like Lutengano noticed, helping them grow professionally and offering them hope of making a living from their art. Visual and performing artists at this center come to create, learn, inspire, exhibit and perform, and possibly earn an income.
Member artists do have access to workshops that will allow them to market themselves and professionalize their practice and do all the things that are required on an international contemporary art basis to bring your artistic practice to a level where you do have regular sales.
Having won an award in the Absa L'Atelier Art Competition, visual artist Winifred Luena agrees that it takes much more than being creative to succeed.
Success for an artist doesn't just come because you create works of art. It depends on where you will take your work in order to sell and whether the public understands you because they can connect with your work.
Lutengano believes that winning the award will not only motivate him to work harder, but will also earn him a better living.
Winning this award will help me increase the amount I charge for my art. My price will definitely go high.
With every stroke of his brush, Lutengano and other Tanzanian artists like him hope to paint a more successful future for themselves. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
In Senegal, a centre of traditional Chinese medicine is becoming the go-to place for those seeking treatment. Its aim is to make it easier for the public to access alternative healthcare. The centre specialises in acupuncture and other medical treatments. CGTN's Noah Otieno has more.
Located in the city of Mbawa, which is about 85 kilometers from Dakar, the Tao Center uses aspects of traditional Chinese medicine to treat different illnesses. According to the founder, this facility has been operating for 7 years now.
Here at the Tao Center, we treat all kinds of diseases and all kinds of conditions, including knee, lower back pains and headaches. We also care for the people who have mobility problems in their arms and feet. We are also specialized in the treatment of diseases that affect digestive organs such as food poisoning. We treat all these diseases only with traditional Chinese medicine.
Currently, the clinic boasts of over 50 doctors and serves more than 60 patients each day. Some patients come from as far as Europe, the United States, and the entire West African region.
I was suffering from sciatica and was undergoing treatment at another health center. Some friends told me about the Tao Center. I was very satisfied with the reception, and there are professionals who provide care.
I had nerve problems, my foot hurt, and the pain was excruciating. Some friends advised me to come to the Tao Center. Since I started treatment here, I now feel far much better.
This botanical garden is the source of raw materials for the processing of drugs administered to patients.
All the plants we use to make our medicines come from this garden. There are at least 80 different species planted here. We also buy spices from China, Morocco, South America, and Europe. It means that our medicines are made from spices that come from different continents. I completed training in Western medicine, but found traditional Chinese medicine simple and natural.
In its 7 years, this clinic has served over 190,000 patients successfully and is seeking to boost its record. As a social corporate responsibility, this clinic offers free healthcare services to children and the elderly. Chinese medicine is renowned worldwide and has formed a basis for many groundbreaking medical discoveries. Now, CGTN.
All the sports news coming up for you after the break, including South Africa and Mali set to square off in the Nelson Mandela Challenge.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
South Africa and Mali will lock horns in the Nelson Mandela Challenge this weekend in Port Elizabeth. It's a game that is more than just football, since it honours the late president's contribution to the country, besides serving Bafana Bafana head coach Molefi Nseki an opportunity to prepare his team for the AFCON qualifiers. CG10's CS Duplessis has more.
Are you not crying? Come on, let's have a hug. Come on, please.
The week leading up to an international friendly is usually all about fine-tuning skills, tactics and analysing the opposition. But once a year, the South African national team does something a little different, including paying a visit to the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital to spread some goodwill in honour of the man who the hospital is named after.
Personally, this experience was very heartwarming. It gave us so much goosebumps because we've come here to support, but not just to support, to show to people that we also people who have hearts and we care about our future. And this initiative is a great one, especially for us as athletes to come and showcase that we're here, we support and we believe in the cause that's at hand.
After the quick visit, it was back to the match preparation, and in particular, new Bafana Bafana coach Molefi Nseki's first match in charge of the 2010 World Cup hosts.
The importance of playing Mali is actually preparing for Ghana and Sudan back-to-back, because we need to have that tactical understanding, tactical cohesion in the team. And I think playing Mali at home, it will also put us under a lot of pressure. And this is the pressure that we're expecting in Ghana when we play Ghana. So we are actually preparing ourselves mentally and tactically going into the back-to-back qualifiers.
Next month's AFCON qualifiers will test Nseki's charges, but playing Mali, a team ranked 14 places above Bafana, will provide the perfect measuring stick ahead of the qualifiers against the Black Stars of Ghana and Sudan's Falcons.
We've got to give Mali a lot of credit, a lot of respect. I think, watching them in the AFCON, although they went out quite early, I thought they were a very good team, and I think it's looking forward to the qualifiers we got coming up. I think it's the right opposition to prepare for those games. So, yeah, I think we using this game as much as we want to go out and win the game. I think we're using it as preparation for what's to come.
The Nelson Mandela Challenge is more than just an international friendly fixture. Yes, it gives the 2010 World Cup hosts a chance to test themselves against a quality opponent, but it's about paying tribute to the man known as the father of the Rainbow Nation and honouring his incredible legacy and ever-present contribution to South Africa through the game of football. CS du Plessis, CGTN, Johannesburg.
Over to European football now. England has suffered its first qualifying defeat in 10 years after a 2-1 loss to Czech Republic. Harry Kane's early spot kick ensured